They thought Naomi Carter was just another quiet black girl they could humiliate in class, until the laughter echoing off those walls turned into the biggest mistake of their lives. In a room full of cowards recording her pain, these boys pushed the wrong girl past her breaking point, and 3 minutes later, the one mocking her was the one collapsing in silence. What happened inside that classroom didn't just flip the power it exposed, the truth they never expected her to fight back with. The first period of American history had barely begun when the classroom door creaked open. A quiet ripple moved through the room as Naomi Carter stepped inside a new black girl with steady posture, calm eyes, and a confidence so controlled it was almost silent. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't trying to impress. But the room immediately took notice, especially the three boys in orange-white varsity jackets slouched across the center row. Griffin Hale, Chase Dalton, and Liam Brooks, together known as the Varsity B Squad. Griffin nudged Chase with his elbow, his lips curling into the type of smirk that meant trouble. "Bro, look at her hair," he whispered loudly on purpose, making sure Naomi heard every word. Chase snorted. Liam burst into a laugh he didn't bother hiding. Naomi inhaled slowly, her shoulders lifting, then lowering with controlled grace. She scanned the classroom once, then chose a seat in the very back, not hiding, just positioning herself away from unnecessary chaos. But chaos always has a way of finding the people who least deserve it. As Naomi set her notebook down, Griffin twisted around in his seat, his voice booming through the room like an unwanted announcement. "Hey, Miss Cottoncloud," he called out, using a racially loaded nickname that punched the air like a slap. The class erupted in laughter, loud, careless, eager to join the cruelty because it was easier than resisting it. Even students who didn't think it was funny still chuckled to avoid becoming the next target. That's how classrooms work. Survival first, conscience later. Naomi didn't move, didn't speak, but her right hand curled into a tight fist beneath the desk, knuckles whitening. Her jaw tightened, and for a split second, a sliver of a moment, something sharp flashed in her eyes. Not fear, not submission, something far more dangerous. Restraint mixed with precision. A few desks away, Ava Sinclair stiffened. Unlike most of the class, Ava didn't laugh. She saw the ugliness for what it was, and she saw something else too. Chase holding up his phone, recording Naomi like she was an animal in a circus cage. Griffin leaned into the shot, mocking her hair, her skin tone, her silence. They planned to post it online. That much was obvious. Ava's stomach twisted. This wasn't teasing, it was targeted degradation. Without hesitating, she slipped her phone beneath her notebook and quietly hit record, capturing every word Griffin spat out. She didn't know what she would do with the footage, but something inside told her she might need it. People like Griffin always pretended to be innocent later, always rewrote the story to paint themselves as victims. The classroom settled only when Griffin finally turned back around, proud of himself, still grinning. Naomi lifted her gaze slowly, deliberately, and locked eyes with him. That single look cut through the room like a razor. Her stare wasn't wild or emotional. It was controlled, steady, unnervingly calm. It was the kind of look someone gives when they have already counted the exits, analyzed the threat, and chosen the exact moment they will respond. A look that said, "You think you know me? You don't." A look that made Griffin blink the first crack in his swagger. Ava's breath caught. Naomi wasn't just another new student trying to survive high school politics. There was something coiled beneath her quietness, something precise and disciplined. Ava didn't know what it was yet, but she could feel its weight. The laughter faded, but the tension Naomi left hanging in the air stayed. And as Ava stared at her recording, she realized something chilling. Naomi was not someone who would break easily, and when people like her finally snap, they don't snap quiet. Ava had no idea that this silent moment would be the spark, and she certainly didn't know the next few minutes would spiral into something far more explosive than anyone in that classroom was prepared to face. 5 minutes remained before the teacher arrived, 5 minutes that felt stretched and sharpened like a blade waiting to be used. For most students, It was the usual dead time before class. But for the varsity B squad, it was the perfect window to turn boredom into cruelty. Griffin Hale spun around in his seat again, wearing the kind of grin that warned everyone he was about to perform. "Hey, Naomi," he called, exaggerating her name like it was comedic material. "Say something. Anything. I want to hear that silky smooth accent." Chase cackled. "Bro, maybe she doesn't speak English," Liam added. "Or maybe she's just shy, because her uniform looks like it came from the clearance bin." The insults weren't clever, but they were loud enough to draw eyes, which was all B Squad ever wanted. Their jokes jumped from her hair to her skin tone, to her silence, to her clothes. The ugliness rolled out of them with practiced ease. Naomi didn't answer. She stayed still, spine straight, gaze lowered, but her breathing changed deeper, slower, trying to regulate something simmering underneath. Her hand rested flat on the desk, but the tendons in her wrist were tight, strained. Ava, seated 2 rows away, watched the entire performance with a nauseated heaviness. She wondered why no one else stepped in, but she knew the truth. Students had learned it was safer to let B Squad have the stage than risk becoming part of the show. Griffin wasn't satisfied. He wanted a reaction even a flinch would do. So he got up from his seat with a swagger, walked casually toward Naomi's desk, and bent down as if to pick up a pen from the floor. Ava's eyes widened. He doesn't even have a pen. In one swift movement disguised as clumsy politeness, Griffin hooked his hand around the leg of Naomi's chair and yanked it sharply backward. Naomi lurched, grabbing the desk edge just in time to keep from falling to the floor. The class burst into laughter, ugly, echoing, automatic. Chase slapped Liam's shoulder. "Bro, did you see her face?" Liam nearly doubled over. Man, she almost ate the floor. But Naomi didn't stumble. She didn't curse. She didn't cry. Instead, she paused, steadied herself, and slowly lifted her head. Heat rose beneath her calm exterior, not panic, but calculation. Griffin stepped closer, towering over her with triumph plastered across his face. "Relax. It was a joke," he said, his tone dripping with mock innocence. "You know what a joke is, right?" Something shifted in Naomi, then a subtle alignment between restraint and resolve. And when she finally spoke, it wasn't loud. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't even angry. It was cold. "Step back if you don't want to regret it." The words cut through the air like cracked ice. The room fell silent in an instant. Even Chase stopped laughing mid-breath. Liam blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. This was the first time Naomi had spoken since arriving, and her voice wasn't timid or shaky. It was measured, level, and chillingly confident. It didn't sound like a threat from someone desperate. It sounded like a warning from someone who already knew exactly what she could do. Griffin's smile dropped, replaced by a crooked sneer. The humiliation of being challenged, especially by someone he saw as weaker, ignited something dark in him. "Oh, really?" he said, stepping dangerously close to her desk. "You're gonna regret talking to me like that." But Naomi didn't look away. Her eyes stayed locked on his, unblinking, unreadable. And for the first time, Griffin couldn't tell what she was capable of. His smirk faltered, ever so slightly, a tiny fracture that exposed how deeply her calm warning rattled him. And because his fragile ego couldn't tolerate the idea of being challenged, Griffin made a choice, a reckless, humiliating, irreversible choice to escalate things further. A choice that would become the biggest mistake of his life. The classroom buzzed with low chatter as the bell approached, but underneath that noise simmered a tension thick enough to taste. Naomi sat at her desk with her hands folded, eyes locked on nothing, mind held in a fragile line between restraint and eruption. Ava watched her closely. That same sharp edge in Naomi's breathing from earlier had not faded. It had deepened. Meanwhile, Griffin Hale, inflated from the attention of Part 2, climbed onto the center row desk with the confidence of a performer stepping onto a stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, spreading his arms wide, "I present to you our new class entertainment." His finger jabbed toward Naomi like a spear. "Come on, Everyone say hi to Miss Cotton Cloud, he shouted, reviving the racially charged nickname with even more venom. Let's welcome her properly. Chase joined in immediately, cupping his hands around his mouth. Cotangent ton clowood, he chanted. Liam echoed with a mocking harmony. Stand up. Give us a spin. Let us see that beautiful hair. A few students laughed again, more out of fear than humor, but others shifted uncomfortably, aware that things were crossing a line. But Griffin thrived on this. He craved domination, and Naomi's silence only fed the hunger. Naomi's expression, however, had changed. Completely. Her jaw tightened, cheek muscles pulled taut, a single pulse beating visibly at her temple. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't afraid. She was contained, holding back something powerful, something that was no longer willing to be ignored. Ava whispered under her breath, "Please don't push her. Please don't push her." But Griffin didn't hear. Or rather, he didn't care. He stomped on the desk for emphasis. "Stand up, Naomi. The class is waiting." Naomi did not stand. She inhaled, once slow, precise, then exhaled through her nose. Her hands unclenched, her eyes lifted, and something inside her crossed a threshold. Then she rose, not in anger, not in panic, but with a deliberate, frightening stillness. The room quieted slightly, unsure what was happening. Naomi didn't look at Griffin. She didn't acknowledge Chase or Liam. Instead, she walked toward the far left corner of the room, toward the supply cabinet, where the class kept gym equipment for warm-up drills. Griffin blinked in confusion. "What is she doing?" Chase muttered. Ava froze. She had noticed Naomi glance at that cabinet earlier, and now terror mixed with realization. Naomi opened the creaking metal door and reached inside. Every eye followed her hand. When she pulled it back out, she wasn't holding a notebook. She wasn't holding a backpack. She wasn't holding anything a bullied girl was expected to pick up. She held a rope. A thick, woven training rope used for fitness exercises, long enough for drills, strong enough to hold weight. A collective gasp rippled across the room. Naomi turned, rope hanging loosely from her right hand. Her face transformed. The softness was gone. The quiet politeness was gone. What stood before the class was someone different, someone honed, someone calculating, someone who had finally been pushed past her limit. Griffin's performance froze mid-sentence. What are you doing?" he asked, voice cracking ever so slightly. Naomi stepped forward with a calmness that scared even the students who had laughed moments before. She said nothing, and that silence was louder than any threat Griffin had thrown at her. Ava could barely breathe. She had never seen a shift in power happen so fast, so effortlessly. Naomi wasn't reacting out of rage. She was acting with purpose. That was the difference. The classroom fell into a stunned paralysis, the laughter dying in their throats, as Naomi stood holding the rope, no longer the quiet girl they thought they could break, but something far more dangerous. But Griffin, too arrogant to sense danger, stepped forward anyway, unaware that he had just crossed Naomi's final line, and that what came next would change everything. The classroom had dissolved into a loose circle, students drifting toward the center, as if pulled by gravity. Whispering, shifting, filming the atmosphere hummed with an electric mix of fear and fascination. And in the middle of it all stood Naomi Carter, the rope coiled loosely in her right hand, her expression unreadable but deadly calm. Ava watched her with a tight throat. Naomi wasn't holding the rope like someone who grabbed it out of panic. No, her fingers curved around it with precision, letting just enough slack dangle. It looked practiced, familiar, almost trained. Where did she learn that? Ava wondered, suddenly aware that Naomi wasn't the kind of girl who stumbled into chaos by accident. She walked into it with intention. Griffin Hale, swollen with ego and simmering embarrassment from being defied, stomped forward. "Oh, you think you're tough now?" he barked. "Drop the rope, freak." Chase and Liam flanked him, puffing their chests out like backup dancers in a violent musical. "Yeah, show her who's boss, Griff," Liam jeered. "Teach her to watch her mouth," Chase added. But Naomi didn't even blink. Her stance shifted, left foot grounding subtly, shoulders loose, weight balanced with uncanny stability. It was the posture of someone who had learned how to move with precision long before today. Griffin took another step, now just inches from her. "Give it here," he growled and lifted his hand. Ava's eyes widened in horror. He was going to slap her, in front of everyone, to humiliate her, to reassert dominance, to show that he, not she, controlled the narrative. The class held its breath. Griffin swung his hand, but Naomi wasn't there. In less than a second, impossibly fast, for anyone who wasn't trained, Naomi twisted her torso, pivoted on the ball of her foot, and slipped under his arm like water, avoiding a blade. Gasps erupted around the room. Her movements weren't impulsive. They were calculated, efficient, the kind that came from muscle memory, honed over years. Before Griffin even registered that he'd missed, Naomi was already behind him. Her right arm snapped upward, rope swinging in a tight arc through the air. The rope looped around his neck, perfectly, cleanly, with the precision of a grappling competitor who had drilled this motion 1,000 times. Griffin jerked forward, choking on surprise. His hands flew instinctively to the rope, fingers clawing, eyes bulging in disbelief. "What? What the hell?" he sputtered, stumbling backward. Chase froze. Liam's bravado cracked instantly. The class fell completely silent, as if someone had sucked the air out of the room. Naomi stood behind Griffin, body angled, grip firm but controlled. She didn't yank. She didn't panic. She simply held the rope in a practiced, tactical position, tightening just enough for Griffin to feel he was no longer the one in power. Ava covered her mouth. She knows exactly what she's doing. This wasn't random violence. This wasn't desperation. This was training. Griffin's face flushed red as he struggled to pull the rope away. "Let go of me," he choked out, but the words barely formed. His fingers shook, failing to find leverage. "What is happening?" Chase shouted, voice trembling for the first time. No one answered, because no one knew. Naomi's face stayed cold, breath steady, perfectly steady, like she was back in a place she had tried to leave behind. A gym, a mat, a competition floor, somewhere where ropes and limbs and control were second nature. Griffin's bravado collapsed as he clawed helplessly at the rope, eyes wide with a terror he had never felt before. And his mind raced with one question. How did she do that? The classroom had become a battleground, and in the next few seconds, every student would witness something that would shatter their understanding of who Naomi Carter truly was. The classroom erupted into chaos the moment the rope tightened. Desks scraped against the floor. Books crashed, and students scattered in every direction. Some screamed, some froze, some simply stared, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. But Naomi Carter remained frighteningly composed. Her stance was firm, anchored. Her grip on the rope was unwavering. Her breathing steady, almost meditative, contrasted sharply with the rising panic in the room. Griffin, however, was anything but controlled. He stumbled, tried to wrench free, tried to pry the rope loose, but Naomi shifted her weight, redirected his movement, and forced him down toward a chair. It wasn't brute strength, it was leverage, technique, calculation. "Naomi, stop," Chase shouted. But even he didn't step forward. No one did, because Naomi's movements didn't resemble a wild reaction. They resembled a skill. Griffin dropped to one knee as Naomi guided him down with precise pressure. His hands clawed at the rope, his confidence collapsing with every second he couldn't break free. Is she serious?" Someone whispered. "This has to be a prank, right?" Another said, voice trembling. But as Griffin's face began to shift from anger to fear, the laughter died. The disbelief turned into a chilling realization. This wasn't a joke, and Naomi wasn't acting out of blind rage. She was controlling Griffin with deliberate, informed force. Ava stood closest, frozen with a mixture of awe and dread. She noticed something no one else did. Naomi was counting. Not out loud, not with her fingers, but with her eyes. A focus, a rhythm, a calculation. Ava recognized it too late. Naomi had done this before. Not in a street fight, not in some chaotic scuffle, but in training. Images flickered through Naomi's mind. Polished mats, tournament banners, coaches shouting frame-by-frame instructions, years of youth grappling competitions, hours of drills, the discipline of self-defense, the precision of pressure control, the razor-thin line between restraint and danger. Naomi knew exactly how much force she was applying, exactly how long she could hold it, and exactly how quickly someone like Griffin would lose control. Griffin tried. One last, desperate pull at the rope, but Naomi adjusted, shifting her stance with impeccable technique. Griffin's legs buckled, and Naomi guided him until he was trapped against the desk, breathing hard, no strength left to fight the hold. "Naomi, please," Liam shouted, voice cracking. Naomi didn't answer. Her eyes were distant now, focused on her internal clock. 1 minute, her training kicked in. Control the leverage. Maintain balance. 2 minutes. His movements became erratic, sloppy, uncoordinated. His confidence had drained completely. Students no longer yelled. They whispered. They stared. Some filmed without breathing. "Somebody get a teacher," a girl cried. But nobody moved toward the door. Ava's heartbeat pounded as she watched Naomi maintain the exact pressure she needed, not too much, not too little, like she was following an invisible script written years ago. Naomi wasn't doing this because she lost control. She was doing this because she regained it. And then, the classroom clock ticked. 2 minutes and 58 seconds. Naomi's eyes flicked upward. 2:59. Griffin's strength gave out. His knees folded. His hands slipped from the rope. 3 minutes. Griffin went, still not hurt, not harmed in a lasting way, but no longer able to resist, overwhelmed by the hold. Naomi released the rope immediately, stepping back with precision, letting Griffin slump safely into the chair. Her breathing stayed level, as though she'd just finished a routine drill, not a confrontation that stunned an entire classroom. The students stared in horrified silence, unable to look away. Ava exhaled shakily. She knew the timing, she knew the technique, she knew everything. Naomi didn't look proud. She didn't look scared. She looked finished. The second the classroom clock hit the 3rd minute, Griffin collapsed fully, and the room froze in collective shock. And just as the silence thickened into dread, the classroom door swung open because someone had finally arrived who was never supposed to witness this moment. The hallway outside the classroom had been unusually quiet until the moment the door slammed open with a sharp, metallic crack. Mr. Turner, the American history teacher, stepped inside holding a stack of worksheets and a half-finished cup of coffee. His routine greeting died in his throat the instant his eyes locked onto the scene before him. Griffin Hale slumped unconscious in a chair. Naomi Carter standing a few feet away, breathing steadily, the rope hanging from her right hand. Desks pushed aside. Students frozen in shock. The cup slid from Mr. Turner's hand and shattered on the floor. What on earth happened here?" he yelled, voice cracking in panic. The class erupted. "She attacked him," Liam shouted, pointing at Naomi. "She choked him for no reason," Chase added, stepping forward as if his volume could rewrite reality. "Griffin didn't do anything," she snapped. Another student chimed in nervously. Mr. Turner rushed to Griffin's side, tapping his shoulder, checking his breathing, his pulse. Griffin stirred faintly, not seriously harmed, but clearly overwhelmed and unable to respond. "What did you do?" Mr. Turner cried, spinning around to Naomi. Naomi stood perfectly still. The rope lay loosely at her feet. Her posture was calm, controlled, nothing like the chaos that swirled around her. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't crying. She wasn't apologizing. She simply inhaled, then exhaled. Ava stepped forward quickly, voice shaking. "It's not what they're saying," Griffin started it. "They were bullying her. They—" "Shut up, Ava," Chase hissed, stepping close enough to intimidate her. "Don't get involved." Ava jerked back, fear rising in her throat. "Enough, Mr. Turner barked. "One at a time. Someone explain this." But before anyone else could distort the story further, Naomi finally spoke. Just 2 words. "I defended myself." The room went dead quiet. Her tone was cold, steady, nothing like someone scrambling to escape consequences. Her face held no panic, only a quiet conviction that unsettled everyone who heard it. Mr. Turner stared at her, thrown off balance by her composure. "Self-defense? Naomi, do you understand what this looks like?" "Yes," she replied simply. "And I know why it happened." Her calmness rattled him more than any outburst could have. Liam sputtered. "She's lying," she just snapped. "She—" Naomi turned her gaze on him slowly, and Liam's sentence dissolved into silence. There was something in her eyes controlled, sharpened, that made him instinctively retreat a step. Mr. Turner rubbed his forehead. This is serious. I need to contact the principal immediately." Students whispered frantically. "She's expelled for sure." Deviliated. "Griffin's parents are gonna freak out. She's done." "This is insane." Ava's heart pounded. She was the only one who had witnessed the full truth. The insults, the taunts, the slap that never landed, the rope swing born from skill, not rage. But the room didn't want truth. They wanted a villain. Chase leaned in toward Ava, whispering through clenched teeth, "You say one more word, and you'll regret it." Ava's breath caught. She looked to Naomi, but Naomi wasn't looking at her. She wasn't looking at anyone. She stood in quiet certainty, as if she knew the next storm was coming and she was already bracing for it. Mr. Turner finally regained some structure and shouted, "Everyone stay here. No one leaves the room until administration arrives." But it was too late. Phones were already in hands. Messages were already being typed. Rumors were already racing down hallways, across social media, into locker rooms and cafeterias. The school trembled under the first wave of gossip. Naomi Carter choked Griffin Hale unconscious. The story traveled faster than the truth ever could, and within minutes, the administration summoned an emergency meeting. Because once the lies began to spread, the real battle for the truth was about to ignite. Principal Wallace's office was never designed for this much noise. Phones buzzed on her desk. 2 secretaries hovered outside the door. Voices clashed in the hallway like a storm pushing against thin walls. By the time Naomi Carter, Ava Sinclair, and the B Squad were escorted inside, the tension had already settled like humidity in the air. Principal Wallace sat behind her polished desk, hands folded, jaw tight. The moment Naomi entered, Wallace's eyes sharpened, not cruel, but assessing, as if she were trying to read a story no one had told yet. Then the door swung open again. Griffin's parents arrived in a flurry of outrage. His mother's face was red with fury, his father pacing like a man ready to fight the school itself. "I want that girl expelled today," Mrs. Hale snapped, pointing directly at Naomi. "She attacked my son, choked him. This is criminal behavior." Naomi didn't flinch. Ava did. Principal Wallace raised a hand. "Please sit. We will hear all sides." But sides were already shouting over each other. Chase stepped forward first, voice trembling but loud enough to sound confident. "Griffin didn't do anything." Naomi just snapped and came after him. "We were all shocked. She just grabbed a rope and—" "That is a lie," Ava whispered, but her voice was too soft to carry. Liam added quickly, "Yeah, Griffin didn't even touch her. She attacked unprovoked. We're the victims here." Mr. Hale slammed his palm on Wallace's desk. "Call the police. I want her charged." Naomi remained silent, breathing slow. Principal Wallace turned to her. "Naomi, this is your chance to explain what happened. I need your version." Before Naomi could speak, Mrs. Hale cut in again. "What version?" "She assaulted my son. There is nothing to explain. Expel her." Ava's hands shook as she stepped forward. "That's not true. Griffin started it." Chase whirled around, stalking toward her. "Ava, shut your mouth." "Enough!" Principal Wallace boomed, the desk trembling under her voice. Silence rippled through the room, but only for a heartbeat. Ava swallowed hard and spoke quickly, hoping her voice wouldn't break. Griffin provoked her. They mocked her, insulted her. He tried to hit her first. She defended herself. Mrs. Hale scoffed. So now you're lying for her. You children think bullying is funny? My son is unconscious. He's fine, Naomi said quietly. It was the first time she spoke. The room stilled. Wallace turned fully toward her. Naomi continued, voice steady. I didn't hurt him. I restrained him. There's a difference. Mrs. Hale exploded. Restrained? Who do you think you are? Naomi's gaze lifted, finally locking onto Principal Wallace's eyes. Then she delivered the sentence that carved the room into silence. Do you want to see the original video? Wallace blinked. Original? Everyone turned to Naomi. Ava reached into her backpack with trembling fingers and handed Naomi her phone. The file was already open, the recording she had captured before the confrontation escalated. Naomi held it calmly. It shows everything, she said softly. What he said, what he called me, what he tried to do. For the first time, Griffin's parents faltered. Chase stuttered. That doesn't prove anything, but his voice cracked under the weight of panic. Principal Wallace extended her hand slowly. Give me the phone. Ava held her breath. Naomi stepped forward and placed the phone gently into Wallace's palm. Wallace pressed play. The sound of Griffin's taunts filled the office, racial slurs, laughter, mockery. His voice was unmistakable. So was the aggression in his tone. Griffin's father sank into a chair. His mother's lips parted, shock overtaking the anger. The B Squad froze completely. Wallace's expression shifted not to sympathy, but to deep consideration. Naomi hadn't shouted. She hadn't defended herself with excuses. She had presented evidence, calmly, with precision. It forced Wallace to see the situation differently. For the first time, Principal Wallace's posture changed, leaning slightly toward Naomi's side, not the B Squad's. But the Hales were not the type to surrender to truth, and the backlash of their denial was about to ignite an even bigger war. The school's special conference room felt more like a courtroom than a meeting. Space. The blinds were half drawn, casting stripes of light across the long wooden table. Stacks of documents lay waiting. A cold pitcher of water sat untouched. The tension in the room was thick enough to grip. At one end of the table sat Naomi Carter, posture straight, expression calm. Beside her, the school's legal advisor, Miss Rowan, reviewed papers with measured, confident movements. Across from them sat the Hales Griffin's parents, flanked by an attorney in a sharp navy suit, whose briefcase looked like it cost more than the table itself. Principal Wallace stood near the door, arms folded, trying to maintain neutrality, but anyone who had seen her face during the video playback knew her balance had shifted. The Hale attorney began with a dramatic flourish, snapping open a folder. Let's be very clear, he said, his voice smooth and practiced. My client's son was assaulted, strangled, humiliated. This young woman, he gestured toward Naomi without looking at her, acted with unprovoked aggression, endangering a student's life. Naomi didn't blink. Mrs. Hale leaned forward. We expect immediate disciplinary action. Expulsion, at minimum. Miss Rowan calmly interjected. We have not yet established cause. Mr. Hale scoffed. The video shows her attacking him. Naomi's voice entered the room like a quiet blade. The second video, not the first, the attorney waved his hand dismissively. Context doesn't excuse violence, especially not this level of violence. Principal Wallace exhaled. The original recording clearly showed Griffin provoking. The attorney cut her off with words. And last I checked, verbal conflict does not justify physical assault. Ava, seated behind Naomi as a witness, flinched at the sharpness of his tone. Naomi remained unshaken. He approached me. He tried to slap me. That's her claim, the attorney retorted. Not proven. The tension tightened. The Hales glared in silence. Miss Rowan closed her folder deliberately, then folded her hands. There is something you need to understand about Naomi, she said, and something that clarifies the nature of what happened. The Hale attorney raised an eyebrow. And what might that be? Miss. Rowan slid a document across the table. This is Naomi Carter's youth athletic record. Mr. Hale frowned. How is that relevant? Miss Rowan continued, her voice even. Naomi is a former state champion in youth self-defense and grappling. She has documented training in controlled restraint, de-escalation, and competitive-level pressure techniques. The room went still. Mrs. Hale blinked rapidly. What does that mean? It means, Miss, Rowan said, leaning slightly forward, that Naomi's actions were not chaotic or malicious. They were controlled. She used minimal force necessary to prevent an escalating physical attack. The attorney's confidence faltered for the first time. That doesn't negate, it absolutely does. Miss, Rowan countered. A trained minor, responding to an imminent physical threat, an attempted strike falls within both state self-defense statutes and district safety protocols. Mr. Hale's mouth opened, but no words emerged. And one more thing, Miss, Rowan added. Her training certifies that she knows how to restrain without causing lasting harm. Griffin's condition confirms this. He is conscious, stable, and has no injuries inconsistent with standard self-defense holds. The Hale attorney stared at the document, stunned. Principal Wallace watched Naomi with newfound respect. Ava exhaled shakily, relief flickering across her face. For the first time since entering the room, Naomi spoke with unmistakable certainty. I did not hurt him. I stopped him. Silence swallowed the room. Mrs. Hale's voice broke. You're saying she's allowed to choke my son because she knows how? No, Miss Rowan replied sharply. She's allowed to defend herself when your son tries to strike her, and she did so with expert restraint. The Hales sat speechless, faces draining of color, as the realization settled. The law and the evidence were not on their side. But the legal tide turning didn't end the battle. Outside these walls, the school was erupting, and the next wave of conflict was already on its way. By lunchtime, the school hallways no longer felt like hallways. They felt like fault lines, thin stretches of space vibrating with whispers, glances, and rumors waiting to erupt. Every conversation seemed to start or end with the same name, Naomi Carter. It started with a single ping on the school's internal social feed, then 5 more, then 20, then the flood. Someone no one knew who had uploaded Ava's original video, the one showing Griffin's taunts, his slurs, his attempt to hit Naomi, everything the B Squad had conveniently left out. Students clustered in circles across the hall, crowding around phone screens, reacting in waves. Wait, he said that to her? She warned him. He didn't listen. I thought she attacked him for no reason. Bro, she told him to back off. He asked for it, but not everyone sided with Naomi. Some students, especially ones tied to athletes, social hierarchies, or other bully groups, felt the shift in power like a threat. If she gets away with this, one boy muttered, every nerd in school's gonna think they can fight back. A girl added, she took down Griffin. Griffin, what if she snaps again? People like that shouldn't be here. Fear disguised itself as moral outrage. Admiration disguised itself as defiance. The cafeteria buzzed with tension so thick it drowned out even the usual lunchtime chaos. Naomi walked through the aisles with quiet steps. Students parted around her like she carried an invisible force field, some impressed, some intimidated, some secretly grateful. A group of girls whispered loudly as she passed. That's her. She looks normal. Yeah, until she flips you over a desk. Naomi kept moving, gaze steady. Ava hurried beside her, clutching her backpack strap, voice low. People are talking a lot. Some of it's good, some isn't. Naomi nodded. I expected that. You're not scared? No. Naomi paused, then added, I learned not to be. There was no arrogance in her tone, only truth, but outside their quiet pocket of calm, the school was splitting into factions. Students who had been bullied themselves or had seen others bullied found hope in Naomi's defiance. They whispered encouragement as she walked by. You were brave. He deserved it. Thank you for standing up. Meanwhile, Groups who thrived on intimidation felt something shift beneath their feet, because if Naomi could stand up to Griffin Hale, the untouchable golden boy, then nothing stopped anyone else from doing the same. Power was shifting, and that terrified them. By mid-afternoon, Principal Wallace's inbox lit up with messages. Concerned parents, anonymous tips, students submitting statements about Griffin, some supporting him, most condemning him. But one email stood out. It had no signature, no sender name, just a single sentence. "This is not the first time Griffin Hale has been accused of bullying. Look into his file." Attached were 3 scanned documents, formal complaints from previous school years, all detailing Griffin's harassment, intimidation, and repeated targeting of vulnerable students, none of which had ever reached disciplinary boards, all of which had been quietly dismissed, because Griffin was a star athlete, because the team needed him, because the school needed the team. Principal Wallace's face drained of color as she read them. Ava and Naomi didn't know it yet, but the moment Wallace opened those files, the ground beneath the school's social order began to crack. Whispers turned into conversations, conversations into confrontations, screenshots into evidence, evidence into consequences. The administration launched a full-scale investigation into Griffin Hale, not just the incident with Naomi, but everything that had been buried beneath his varsity jacket. And as the truth began to unspool, the balance of power in the entire school shifted, setting the stage for the largest reckoning Crestwood High had ever seen. By late afternoon, the entire student body was summoned to the courtyard. A portable PA system crackled to life, and teachers herded students into loose lines beneath the fading sun. Word had already spread that an announcement was coming, but no one knew how big it would be, except Naomi. She stood near the back, Ava at her side, watching Principal Wallace step onto the makeshift stage with a folder clutched tightly in her hands. The principal's expression was different today, stern, unsettled, but also resolute, like someone preparing to upend the ground everyone was standing on. When the microphone squealed, the courtyard fell silent. "Students of Crestwood High," Principal Wallace began. After reviewing the evidence surrounding this morning's incident, as well as previous reports that were not properly addressed, the administration has reached a decision. Whispers rippled like wind through tall grass. In the second row, Chase and Liam stiffened, glancing nervously at each other. Wallace continued, "Effective immediately. Griffin Hale is suspended indefinitely for repeated acts of bullying, harassment, and behavior that directly violates school policy." Gasps broke across the courtyard. "Indefinitely? No way. He's the star linebacker." They actually suspended Griffin Hale? B-Squad looked like the ground had disappeared beneath their feet. Chase shook his head violently. "This is insane," he muttered. "This is all because of her." He jabbed a finger toward Naomi, but for the first time, no one followed his lead. The spell of fear Griffin had cast on the school was breaking publicly, dramatically. Principal Wallace raised her hand for silence again. "And there is one more matter I must address." The air tightened. Ava glanced toward Naomi, who remained still, composed, but undeniably bracing. Wallace inhaled deeply. In light of the evidence submitted by multiple witnesses, including a video documenting targeted harassment, we must acknowledge that a student in this school was unfairly provoked, attacked verbally, and placed in a hostile environment. The courtyard held its breath. Wallace's gaze swept the crowd before landing directly on Naomi. "Naomi Carter," she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "On behalf of Crestwood High, I extend a formal apology for the mistreatment you endured here. You were forced into a situation no student should ever face, and you responded with restraint and discipline far beyond what anyone could expect." The crowd erupted. Did she just apologize to her? "We've never had a public apology before. Naomi's a legend now," Chase shouted over the noise. "She attacked him. Why is she being praised?" But no one listened. No one cared. Students began looking at Naomi not with fear, but with something closer to respect or awe. Even those who had doubted her earlier now whispered with a strange mixture of admiration and disbelief. Naomi didn't smile. She didn't step forward. She didn't raise her chin in victory. She stood still, quietly absorbing the moment, not as a triumph, but as a validation of truth. Ava nudged her gently. "Naomi, people see you now." "Maybe," Naomi murmured. "But I'm not trying to be anyone's hero." Her eyes drifted across the courtyard to the buildings beyond the classrooms, where other voices had been silenced long before hers. "I just want the truth to keep coming out," she said softly, "for all of us." And just like that, Naomi Carter, the quiet new girl, became the symbol of something Crestwood High had never seen before, the possibility of standing up and being believed. But Naomi's rise didn't end the storm. It only pushed the next wave closer, and darker truths were waiting to break open. The disciplinary office felt colder than usual, as if the walls themselves were bracing for what was about to be revealed. Principal Wallace sat at the long table, folders spread out before her, some old, some recently forwarded to her inbox. Naomi and Ava sat to her right, quiet but alert. Miss Rowan, the school's legal advisor, stood beside the filing cabinet, arms crossed tightly. The room carried the weight of a secret finally ready to breathe. After receiving the anonymous email, Principal Wallace had gone straight to the archives, and what she found there had shaken her to her core. Hidden beneath years of untouched paperwork were 3 separate bullying reports, all naming the same student, Griffin Hale: physical intimidation, threats, repeated harassment of vulnerable classmates, documents that had never reached disciplinary boards, documents overridden or dismissed, and each dismissal was signed off by the same person, Coach Dempsey, head of the football program. Now he stood across from Wallace, arms stiff, jaw locked, refusing to sit. "These reports were handled internally," Dempsey insisted, voice clipped. "All minor issues. Nothing that required administrative escalation." Wallace lifted one of the reports. "A student claimed Griffin cornered him in the locker room and threatened him." "How is that minor?" Dempsey's face hardened. "Boys roughhouse. Athletes get competitive. It was harmless." "Harmless?" Ava whispered, unable to hold back. The coach ignored her, but Principal Wallace did not. "These are not harmless." She placed 3 files side by side, 3 separate students, 3 separate years, and every single one of them disappeared from our system. Dempsey exhaled through his nose. "I did what was necessary to protect the team's reputation. Colleges were scouting him. We couldn't risk." "So you covered it up?" Wallace snapped. Silence. Ava clutched the strap of her backpack, anxiety twisting through her chest. Naomi stayed still, unreadable, her calm presence grounding the room despite the storm breaking open inside it. As if on cue, Wallace's email notification pinged. She opened the inbox, then froze. In a steady stream, messages from former students were arriving. Alumni who had heard rumors about the incident. Alumni who recognized Griffin's name. Alumni who had stayed silent back then, but no longer. One wrote, "He made my freshman year unbearable." Another, "I reported him, but the coach said it would damage the team." Another, "Thank you for finally looking into this." The room tilted under the weight of their voices. Miss Rowan stepped forward. "This is no longer an isolated incident. This is a pattern, a buried one." Coach Dempsey's confidence faltered. "You can't take their word over mine." Ava stood suddenly, voice shaking but determined. "I have something else." She pulled out her phone, scrolling nervously before pressing play. A short audio clip filled the room, Griffin's voice, unmistakably his, speaking with chilling intent. The exact words were threatening and targeted, expressing violent hostility toward black students who dared to stand up for themselves. No one spoke when it ended. Principal Wallace's face changed not just to anger, but something deeper: realization, revulsion, responsibility. "This," she said quietly, "is no longer about a fight. This is a hate-driven pattern of harassment." Naomi looked down, her expression tight but steady. Wallace turned to her. "Naomi, I need you to give a full, formal statement. Your account will be central to the investigation moving forward." And just like that, Naomi, once the silent new girl, was placed at the heart of a school-wide investigation that threatened to expose years of buried misconduct. But Naomi carried a truth she hadn't shared with anyone, a truth that, once revealed, would shift the entire direction of the story. The school's main conference room had been rearranged into something resembling a tribunal. Long table, centered, chairs arranged in stiff lines, administrators typing frantically on laptops, and murmurs echoing like distant thunder. Everyone waited. Everyone sensed the shift coming. Naomi sat with Miss Rowan and Principal Wallace at one end of the table. The atmosphere was tight but controlled until the door opened, and Dr. Helena Carter walked in, tall, poised, unshakably calm. Her presence alone altered the energy in the room. Her navy blazer and crisp white blouse contrasted sharply with her warm brown skin. Her expression, however, was not warm, it was focused, formidable, the look of a woman who had stepped into spaces like this before and refused to be intimidated by any of them. A few administrators exchanged whispers. "That's Helena Carter? She advises the state on discrimination cases. She's here for Naomi?" Yes, she was. Helena approached the table with slow, deliberate steps. She placed a leather folder in front of her, then turned to Naomi and touched her shoulder gently, the first softness the room had seen from her. "Are you all right?" Helena asked. Naomi nodded, but her eyes flickered with something Ava hadn't seen before, vulnerability mixed with relief. Before anyone else could speak, the door flew open again. Griffin's parents stormed in, followed by their attorney. Mrs. Hale spotted Helena and immediately rolled her eyes. "Oh, wonderful," she scoffed loudly. "Another race card performance. Is this going to be some kind of victimhood show?" The entire room froze. Even the attorney's face paled. Principal Wallace's breath caught in disbelief. Ava's mouth dropped open. The words echoed like an insult thrown into a cathedral. But Dr. Helena Carter simply turned her head slowly and fixed Mrs. Hale with a calm, razor-sharp stare. "No," Helena said. "This is going to be a truth show." She opened her folder, pulled out a stack of documents, and placed them neatly on the table. "These," she said coolly, "are public records from the county archives." "Mr." Hale frowned but leaned forward. Helena continued, "Your family has been involved in 3 separate incidents involving racial harassment in the last 10 years. 2 involving adults," she tapped the top file, "and 1 involving Griffin." Gasps rippled through the room. Miss Rowan blinked hard. Principal Wallace sat straighter. Ava covered her mouth. Mrs. Hale sputtered. "Those charges were dropped." "Dropped," Helena repeated, "because of your financial leverage and your willingness to bury consequences, but not erased." She slid the papers across the table. "They're relevant now, because you argued my daughter's actions were random, unprovoked, baseless." Helena's voice sharpened. "But history says otherwise. Your son didn't begin this pattern today. He continued it." Naomi stared at her mother, stunned. "She knew? She knew before I ever walked into this school?" Helena placed a firm hand on the stack of files. "I have watched your son's behavior for months," she said. "I have watched the way he treats black students, the way he behaves online, the way he uses his status to shield himself. And I am telling you now, Mrs. Hale, this time, the truth will not be buried." Silence fell heavy across the room. Griffin's parents looked as if the ground had dropped beneath them. Even the attorney hesitated, suddenly aware that the narrative he came prepared to protect was crumbling. Naomi felt a shock run through her. Her own mother had known about Griffin long before this incident, and more than that, Helena had been preparing to protect her daughter from the shadows. But before Naomi could process the revelation, a new figure stepped into the doorway, someone neither she nor her mother expected, someone ready to challenge everything again. The hallway behind the disciplinary conference room was dim and unusually still, a narrow stretch of quiet in a building overflowing with anger, fear, and unfolding scandal. Naomi stepped out to catch her breath, but she didn't get more than 3 steps before she noticed someone waiting near the lockers. Liam Brooks. The same Liam who had mocked her. The same Liam who laughed when Griffin humiliated her. The same Liam who joined in the jeers like it was a sport. But now, he looked nothing like the swaggering athlete she knew. His varsity jacket hung awkwardly on his shoulders. His hands shook, and his eyes darted nervously down the hall. When Naomi approached, he flinched as if expecting her to strike him. I need to talk to you," he whispered, voice hoarse. Ava, who had stepped out behind Naomi, stiffened defensively. "What do you want, Liam?" He shook his head quickly. "Not trouble. Not this time. I can't keep quiet anymore." Naomi studied him carefully. She didn't see arrogance. She didn't see hostility. She saw fear and guilt. Liam stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Griffin didn't start all this on his own," he said. He's messed up, yeah, but the real push came from someone else." Naomi's eyebrows narrowed slightly. "Who?" Liam swallowed hard. "Coach Dempsey." Ava snapped her head up. "The football coach?" "Yeah." Liam rubbed the back of his neck. "After Greenfield transferred last semester, the coach kept saying we were losing respect, that the team had to keep its image. So when you showed up new, confident, different, he told Griffin that we had to set the tone. Make sure you knew who ran things here." Naomi felt something cold settle in her chest. "So he ordered you to bully me." Liam nodded miserably. "We didn't even think. We just did what he told us. Griffin was the worst, but we followed him because that's what we'd always done." Ava's voice rose with disgust. "You could have ruined her life." Liam's eyes filled with a shame he didn't try to hide. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm not saying sorry because we got caught, I'm saying it because I finally understand how wrong it was." He looked directly at Naomi, voice trembling. "You didn't deserve any of it." Naomi exhaled slowly. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement, and for Liam, that alone seemed to steady him. Then he reached into his backpack. "I have something," he whispered. "Something you need to see." He pulled out a tiny silver memory card, holding it like it was radioactive. Naomi and Ava exchanged startled glances. Liam continued. "Griffin recorded everything the coach told him. He liked having proof in case he needed to blackmail someone later. This," he tapped the card, "is from the day you arrived." Ava's hands covered her mouth. Naomi felt her pulse spike. "What's on it?" she asked quietly. Liam's voice dropped to a near whisper. "A video of Coach Dempsey telling Griffin to go after you, telling him to make an example out of you, to put the new girl in her place, so no one else would challenge his players." The hallway seemed to tilt under the weight of the revelation. Naomi took the memory card slowly, carefully, as if holding a live wire. "With this," Liam said, "the entire coaching staff goes down. Griffin's parents go down with them. Everything, all of it comes out." Then, for the first time, Liam's eyes lifted with something like courage. "If you want me to testify, I will. I'll tell the truth. All of it." He looked at Naomi with sincere, trembling regret. "I'm sorry," Liam said, "and I'll stand with you if you let me." But once the video slipped into the world, the reaction was far more explosive than any of them imagined, and the community's fury was only just beginning. The auditorium was filled beyond capacity. Folding chairs lined the aisles, students leaned against the back walls, and parents crowded in with tense, bewildered faces. Even teachers, normally calm and collected, whispered nervously to each other. This wasn't a meeting. It was an event. Crestwood High had announced a mandatory all-school assembly, with a live stream running for families, after new evidence surfaced regarding the Naomi Griffin incident. Everyone knew what that meant. The video had leaked. A hush fell as Principal Wallace stepped onto the stage. Helena Carter sat beside her. Naomi took a seat in the front row, shoulders squared, Ava gripping her hand for support. Wallace tapped the microphone. "What you are about to see," she began, "is difficult, but transparency is necessary." The lights dimmed. A screen flickered to life. And then Liam's video played. Coach Dempsey standing in the locker room, his voice unmistakable. His instructions to Griffin clear, deliberate, telling him to intimidate Naomi, telling him to make sure she knows her place, telling him to shut down the new girl before she becomes a problem. Gasps rippled through the room like shock waves. Parents covered their mouths. Students stared wide-eyed. Teachers froze, horrified. By the time the video ended, the room had transformed. What had once been whispers of denial was now a rising tide of outrage. Principal Wallace cleared her throat, voice steadier than the room deserved. "In light of this evidence," she announced, "Coach Dempsey is hereby suspended without pay, effective immediately, pending a full legal investigation." The audience erupted, some cheering, some furious. Griffin's mother leapt to her feet. "This is a setup," she shouted. "A coordinated attack. A racial conspiracy." The crowd recoiled at her words. Helena Carter stood, gaze firm but measured. "There is no conspiracy," she said. "There is only truth. And the truth is that your son and his coach participated in a pattern of targeted harassment." Mr. Hale tried to protest, but Wallace cut in sharply. "The evidence is clear, and this community will not tolerate hate-driven behavior." The room quieted again, not in peace, but in anticipation. Wallace continued, "Before we close, I have invited any students who wish to speak." She didn't expect what happened next. A single black student stood, then another, and another. Latino students followed, Asian students, mixed-race students, students who had never spoken in assemblies before. One by one, they shared stories of bullying, intimidation, and complaints that had been dismissed or ignored, incidents that mirrored Naomi's but had been buried under athletics and reputation. Within minutes, the assembly had transformed into something historic, a public reckoning of a school's hidden wounds. Naomi watched silently, her heart twisting. She hadn't wanted anyone else to have suffered like she had, but seeing them rise, seeing their courage, it meant something deeper than victory. It meant change. Finally, Wallace raised her hand for quiet. "Naomi Carter," she said, "based on the evidence and testimony presented today, you are officially cleared of all wrongdoing. You acted in self-defense." A wave of relief moved through the room, and Griffin Hale, Wallace continued, is being referred to the School Safety Commission for further disciplinary action. A sharp intake of breath echoed. This was serious, far more serious than detention or suspension. As students filed out, whispers spread that local reporters had already contacted the school. The story was growing beyond Crestwood's walls, and the administration was now under scrutiny to rebuild its entire anti-bullying system. But for Naomi, justice wasn't the end of the journey. She wanted something deeper, something that would heal not just her, but every student who had ever stayed silent. The late afternoon sun washed the courtyard in warm gold, softening the sharp edges of the day. A light breeze drifted through the trees, carrying the distant hum of post-assembly chatter. For the first time in weeks, Crestwood High felt less like a battleground and more like a place that could breathe again. At a quiet corner near the benches, Naomi Carter stood arranging a small semicircle of chairs. Nothing fancy, just a few seats facing one another. A space for voices that had been ignored for too long. Ava arrived first, placing a hand on Naomi's shoulder. "You ready?" she asked gently. Naomi nodded. "They deserve a place to speak, a real one." Within minutes, a group of students filtered in. Some Naomi recognized, some she'd never met, but had seen in the eyes of the assembly. The ones who had suffered silently, who had carried wounds no one believed. Now they sat together, not as victims, but as people finally allowed to exhale. Naomi opened the gathering with quiet sincerity. "This isn't about what happened to me," she said. "It's about what's happened to all of us." One by one, students spoke, not with shaking voices or trembling fear, but with release. Stories came out like knots, finally being untied. Small humiliations, repeated harassment, words that had lingered long after they were spoken. This time, though, there were no mocking laughs, only nods, only compassion, only the soft sound of healing beginning. Midway through, a shadow hovered near the edge of the circle. Liam Brooks. His hands were shoved in his pockets, his head low, as if unsure whether he even deserved to step onto the grass. Several students stiffened at the sight of him. Ava moved slightly toward Naomi, protective by instinct, but Naomi met Liam's eyes and gave a slight nod. He walked forward slowly. I know I don't have the right to ask anyone for anything, he began, voice cracking, but I wanted to say, I'm sorry. To all of you. Not just Naomi. A few students crossed their arms. One muttered, too late now. Liam swallowed hard. You're right, but I'm not here for forgiveness. I'm here because I want to change, and I want to help anyone I hurt. The tension hung thick until Naomi stepped toward him. Change doesn't start when others forgive you, she said softly. It starts when you face who you were and decide who you want to become. Liam nodded, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. I want to join whatever anti-bullying program the school builds, even if no one believes me yet. A murmur spread through the group, not approval, not rejection, just thoughtfulness. Healing didn't need to rush. Suddenly, the conference room door opened, and Dr. Helena Carter approached with Principal Wallace. Helena's expression held something new, pride mixed with purpose. I have an announcement, Helena said, projecting her voice. The school board has approved a new scholarship fund, the Carter Shield Grant. Gasps fluttered through the circle. It will support students who have faced injustice or hardship, Helena continued. And to ensure it stays true to its mission, the board has chosen a student director. She turned to Naomi. You! Naomi froze. Ava broke into a smile. Even Liam exhaled in relief. Naomi swallowed. Me? Helena nodded. You didn't just defend yourself, you inspired change. In the soft glow of sunset, the group of students gathered closer, united not by pain, but by the possibility of something better. The camera pulls back. Naomi steps forward, wind lifting her hair as she looks across the school courtyard. No longer a place of fear, but a place she helped transform. A narrator's voice fades in. She never wanted to be a hero, but the truth made her a symbol, and as the screen fades to black, Crestwood High stands quieter, humbled and forever changed by the echoes of justice that will continue long after the story ends. And just like that, the girl they tried to break became the girl who made an entire school finally face the truth. Naomi didn't just defend herself, she exposed every lie hiding behind their laughter, every mask those bullies wore, every adult who thought silence could bury justice. Her 3-minute stand became a warning. Mockery is loud, but consequences speak louder. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this story shocked you the most, and why? Drop your thoughts in the comments so we can talk about it. And if this story hit you the way it hit us, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that refuse to stay silent.